neighborhood.
Before we invite the Honorable Minister, we request the room to quickly settle down. Please also, through this session, keep your mobile phones on silent mode so that we can have a smooth flow of the rest of the proceedings. We request you to please stay with us and stay seated while we get ready to invite the Honorable Minister into the room. So ladies and gentlemen, here it is, our next conversation titled India's World Navigating the New Power Game, in conversation with Executive Editor of ET Politics, Pranab Dhal Samanta. Please welcome the Honorable Minister of External Affairs, Dr. S. Jaishankar. A very, very warm welcome to you, Honorable Minister. Over to you, Mr. Samanta.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jaishankar. The External Affairs Minister is no stranger to the ET Leadership Forum, so I won't spend too much time introducing him all over again. Welcome, sir. And I know you've taken time out of a very busy schedule and in fact at some point altered it for our sakes, so a double thank you for that. So sir, we are going through, navigating a very difficult period, and particularly for our audience, a lot of them are in business, and they have to navigate a very difficult terrain for themselves as well. But as far as the country is concerned, you, Dr. Jaishankar, are one of the prime navigators. And since the last year till now, how much has changed, and how do you anticipate moving from here, and your counsel to the audience who's come here, also with many questions around this uncertainty?
Okay. It's a big question, and I guess it's a good question to start the conversation. So, in a sense, what you are asking is, how does the world look? And depending on how you assess that, what do you do about it? And what do particularly people in business do about it? So, how does the world look? It's not a very comforting answer I'm going to give you. I think what we have seen, particularly in the last year, but I would really describe it as a growing trend. It looks increasingly competitive. It looks competitive to a degree where countries and policymakers really push the envelope. On occasion, they pushed it to a point where you actually have conflicts. There are two major conflicts going on in the world when a decade ago, probably people thought that even one would be too much for the global system to handle. And one conflict is in its fifth year, and the other one, for all the ups and downs, there isn't really light at the end of that tunnel. The third point, so competition one, extreme competition, conflict, and if I can just flip back to the competition, when it's expressing itself not just in conflicts, even in other ways, where countries are weaponizing everything that they can. So that brings me in a way to my third C, which is choke points. That this is a world increasingly characterized by choke points. And choke points means that a country or a set of countries have established dominance or what they think is dominance in a particular field. They're willing to deploy that dominance, partly because they think it's usable, it will inflict pain, and that they themselves are insulated from it, so they can handle the consequences of it. So so at one level, the world chugs along. Everybody is preoccupied with the daily business. But at another, you have to bear in mind this much more intensely competitive sort of atmosphere ethos. The fact that these conflicts today are really, really created a complication. I mean, it's affected daily lives of people in far-off societies. And that these choke points are a factor that business has to come to terms with.
Do you have a mantra to deal with it?
Well, if I
Because
described...
I said everybody over here is a stakeholder, I assume.
Sure. So look, if I declared the problem in terms of C's, maybe I move an alphabet beyond and say, I'm not sure this is a solution, but this is a response. So one, I think the obvious sort of belief, which everybody, not just in business, but even in politics, in strategy, is to de-risk. I mean, de-risking would be my biggest mantra, as you called it. And the second would be to diversify. So the more partners, more sources that you have, clearly to that extent, you have de-risked it. The third, to deal with distortions. I mean, today, for example, we are finding a very distorted energy market, a very distorted fertilizer market, very distorted shipping. So, because the choke points are creating distortions. And my fourth D would be, once upon a time they said, trust but verify. Today I'd say distrust and diversify, which is assume that things may not go right. Build it into your plans. Don't let your supply chains really be just in time anymore. Don't always assume that the lowest cost will be the determinant. Today you have to build in that margin of safety. Energy markets is a very good example. So even for businesses, I think the supply chains, the more you diversify it, the more you hedge, because you can't trust the world to work in the most efficient manner because of all these distortions. I think this is the reality of the world, and it applies to national policy makers. It applies to enterprise decision makers.
This is the foreseeable future?
To the extent you can foresee the future, yes.
That's a grim picture.
Look, I think it's a realistic picture because if you just look at the last few months, okay? Because, it's one thing to give a prescription or an analysis. In our case, it's tested against reality. So look at someone who has the responsibility, or a set of people who have the responsibility of, let us say, meeting. Now, what do you do with the energy requirements of a country, of an economy like India, when your war has just broken out in the Gulf? Now, if I didn't, in a sense, apply that mindset, that analytical construct that I'm giving you, we actually increased our energy supplies, I think, from about 24 or 25 to more than 40. So we diversified, okay? We booked, cargoes at a time where probably, where the availability was much more important than the price point. So I would say if one today looks at the energy security, the fact that we have met the country's energy security needs, the fact that we have met the fertilizer security needs, and in a sense the food security which derives from it. The fact that trade, for most, much of our trade has taken place. Obviously, there are disruptions in the Black Sea and in the Strait of Hormuz, but by and large, so if you actually use the metrics of evaluation, energy, trade, supply chains, fertilizers, food, I think we've actually risen to that challenge as a country. And we've risen to that challenge as a country because on the run, we actually practiced what I'm preaching to you right now.
I'll just swing this the other way. As a government, since 2014, if you look at it, there has been one risk or the other, which you've had to de-risk. We had a China problem, then we ran into a COVID, which was unprecedented. Then we ran into the Ukraine-Russia. Then we ran into certain unexpected heavy weather with the Trump administration in the initial days. Then West Asia. So while you say de-risk, how we've been de-risking and de-risking, are we getting into a de-risking trap of sorts where you de-risk one but create risk in another place? Or we get in some kind of cycle which is unending?
Well, good question. Let's take the 5 or 6 examples you gave. China, US and tariffs, market access, COVID, Ukraine, Gulf. Why have we had so many crises in quick succession? I mean, COVID is a slightly different issue. I mean, I don't want to get into that debate, but why do we have that? We are having it because really the old global order is kind of declining or unraveling. New one hasn't come, so this is a sort of a twilight zone. And I again come back to my first concept, competition, that in a much more stable setting, I mean, I'm really using Economic Times, the world, this analogy of world as a market, okay? So the markets are well regulated, everything is, the players are known, everybody knows, their behavioral patterns. Now imagine if now suddenly everything is open. Now, there will be countries who will really push and say, okay, let me push the envelope and see what I get. And what has actually happened is the global order has unraveled, so that's opened up many more possibilities, including much more risky behavior. And secondly, because, the global energy scenario has changed, that countries who are big importers of energy are exporters of energy. Regions, geographies have changed. Energy has changed, technology has changed, including military technology. As I said, weaponization is more. So the propensity to take risks, it's a much riskier market, okay? And the players are constantly testing that market because many of them feel they can, let me see when I push this what happens. Maybe I'll get away with it. So that's the sort of situation we have. Now your point, so when you say multiple risks, yes, I think we need to hardwire the risks into our thinking and make de-risking almost like a second habit. So I would
build in several redundancies.
Yeah, so I would say the just-in-time era is over, and the just-in-case era is clearly in place. So every country, every enterprise now has to plan just in case what happens when things go wrong, because there is an empirical basis now to assume that somewhere new risks will arise. Now, the point, are there risks in de-risking? Yes, there are. But you have some geographies, for example, who found it very risky to import energy from one source. So they switched to another source. But that's an equally big exposure there, and that has consequences. I mean, if you're talking about energy, for example, you say, we think we associate risks with fossil fuel because there's a finite supply source. So then if you move to renewables, are there not risks in renewables?
Of course.
So if you see what is the sourcing of renewables? Is there not excessive exposure there? So the reality of this world is, while every problem may have a solution, many solutions also have problems. So if you think you're getting out of one situation, think through what you're getting into, because that could open you up for more. And therefore, to me, the most de-risked approach is the approach the Prime Minister was talking about yesterday from this very stage, which is make in India, design in India, invent in India, collaborate from India, partner from India, GCC from India. The more you do within a space which you can predict, calculate, control, motivate, the better off you are.
He in fact went to the extent of saying a stable India will actually bring stability to the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for a lot of, and you know, I give you examples of it. I mean, if you look, for example, the trade volatility which has come as a result of the tariff volatility. I think you're already seeing that de-risking moves. And the India-EU FTA, which was languishing for so many years, the fact that both sides found it in their interest now, that something which was really moving along so slowly suddenly acquired a momentum. And from our point of view today, I would argue that multiple trade agreements with the right partners on the right terms, obviously. So for me, a trade agreement, an FTA with Europe, with UK, hopefully with Canada at some point, a bilateral trade agreement with the US, all of these would be part of our de-risking strategy. And to some extent, part of theirs.
But Dr. Jaishankar, you know, one of the few cornerstones of our strategy, if we're talking about our strategy, IMEC, Quad, the whole connection right up to Europe, and then suddenly you have this US-China G2 talk. So and then you have the crisis in West Asia. So where is our strategy and how is it looking? The big plan as we once made it a few years back, how is it looking for you in this changed scenario with the government change in US as well as what's happened in West Asia and across? Does it still hold?
I think the basic plan, as you call it, or outlook or strategy, I think it's a fundamentally sound one. I do believe it is an operation. I see it continuing. But like any plan, any vision, any strategy, it has to move along with times. So if we thought of something in, let us say, 2014, 15, 16, 17, obviously if all these big events have happened, it cannot be exactly that in 26, 27, 28. You have to keep, so you keep some, you modify some, but you have to, I mean, if there are structural changes, basic shifts, you make them as you go along. So what is it, in a way? I'm giving you now, you know, I mean, from a foreign policy perspective, I think the first priority is obviously to secure the neighborhood. And when you talked about de-risking, you would notice in these years, actually, the neighborhood has also been exceptionally volatile. You've had, you know, you've had unrest and government changes in Sri Lanka, in Bangladesh, in Nepal. You know, Myanmar has been a continuing situation. Pakistan, the less said, the better. So you've had actually a very turbulent neighborhood. So the first part of the plan is, therefore, how do you secure it? How do you stabilize it? Because that's your immediate periphery. And there, I think the whole idea is really to invest and incentivize instability. That the more business you do, the more the relationship counts for both parties, the likelihood of it being more stable and predictable. And we have to build in the fact that they too have their political processes and change will happen. They're not going to remain static partners. So some of it may go in a way you like, sometimes it may not, but you handle that. Let me finish it before, because I can see you dying to ask me follow-up. The second is beyond that, the extended neighborhood. So you have Southeast Asia, ASEAN leading to Indo-Pacific. You have this whole ocean saga. So you have actually, for the first time, at least in our modern history, a kind of an oceans strategy. Then you have this huge reach out to the Gulf. You know, in fact, I would say in the last decade, if there's one big thing which has changed, it is the intensity of our relations, the quality of our relations with the Gulf, and then towards Central Asia. So that's your second. Then there are certain very standout geographies, Africa, Latin America, which require a particular, level of energy, attention. And then when you come to the, I would say, the big league, the major players, you're really looking for optimal positioning where you have, the most business or the best, the most convergence, and where you have relationships, you try to manage them, and you find really among the big players, US, China, Russia, Europe, Japan, etc., find, what really works best for you. Now this, in a way, is theoretical. In real life, sometimes you get into situations. We had a bad patch in our ties with China. So when, one big relationship has a problem, it then pulls you off your optimal positioning a bit. Then you try to find ways of dealing with it. So you can have bumps. I mean, nobody ever said that good foreign policy means foreign policies which will be smooth and free of problems. It doesn't happen in real life. So you keep calibrating, you keep adjusting, but this broad picture, which I put to you, I think works, provided the heart of the picture, which is home, must deliver. The stronger we are at home, the bigger the economy, the more manufacturing, because without manufacturing, you're not going to get technology, you're not going to move into modernity. If you handle your urbanization right, if you improve your agricultural productivity, if you make it easier to do business, if you improve the quality of ease of living of people, as I said, I mean, everything which the Prime Minister yesterday shared with all of you as his vision, that the modernization, the growth, the rise of India at home is essential for this plan to work. Because a larger, more resourced, more confident India will be able to do much more in the neighborhood, much more in the extended neighborhood, much more, will count much more in the big league, will be able to establish a footprint in Latin America and Africa, which will be less if you slow down at home. So at the end of the day, the foundation on which strategy would be built will really be on the achievements at home.
It sounds like test match at home and T20 overseas. But, it's an interdependent world. India can grow also because there are dependencies which you can't discount. But having said that, I mean, is it T20 diplomacy for you nowadays?
I think what happens is, to make the press happy, we need to play enough T20s. So that's like the spectators need to come in, have a good time one evening. But real life has a lot of test match also in it, because it doesn't get decided in short time frames. It's not the immediate headlines. It is sometimes not even what appears to you as a win or often these are processes, these are investments over a long time, these are relationships, and there will be ups and downs, and sometimes even in the downs you need to hold steady. So as I said, you have a war in Ukraine going on for 5 years. That it's not a T20 prediction. People may have thought the Gulf would be a T20 match. It has turned out to be not even a test, maybe a test series, or maybe even longer. So the point is, look, I know that today, all of us, the way we have retrained ourselves, we want quick answers, we looking for, crisp, short solutions. Some of it can be given, but a lot of it are almost like readouts from what is a long evolving situation. So it's like a dipstick, okay, where are you today, what is happening? But it's real life problems, particularly complicated, geopolitical
Not
problems.
always. No, when you say Russia oil on, Russia oil off, now we have a bill in the US which might again turn it off.
We have never, let me be very clear here. We have never said anything is on or off. We have, in fact, on that issue, always said we will do whatever is best for the Indian consumer. For me, the Indian consumer is never off. So I will do what it takes. I'm very clear on since you are talking about that, let's look at these two conflicts. People give you that T20 kind of prescriptions. Oh, we have a great relationship on that side and therefore we should have stood with them. I have equities on all sides. If I look today at what's happening in the Gulf, I have very, very, serious, substantive relations with all the Gulf kingdoms. I have a long history with Iran. I have a very strong relationship with Israel and with the United States. So when you want that, a fast T20 clean-cut answer, how do I give it to you when actually I have to actually play, in a sense, play all four sides? I have the same situation in Ukraine. I have a historical relationship with Russia. I have a relationship with Ukraine, very substantial. There is the European Union to be considered, and now there is the United States to be considered. So whatever is my positioning has to take all of this into account. So it's not, the equation has many more variables and many more vectors than people normally assume. But the bottom line would be that we are not taking positions or decisions with the purpose of which is to please somebody or to look good or to make great headlines. We are looking at what serves the reality of our national interest, often very complex, often very, very practical. Even if you look at the Gulf, to me, it is finally, if I have a 10 million community there, if I have an energy issue, if it is a supply chain, it is a connectivity issue, I have to take all of that into consideration.
I get that, sir, and you've mentioned West Asia and how we have invested in West Asia, relationships in the Gulf particularly. But sir, if I may, and some of the criticism you may have heard, is that eventually we see Pakistan and its general walking away with the trophies, getting all the accolades and benefits. And now they've signed this Mecca Accord with, they say, some kind of a collective defense principle akin to the NATO. How do you view these developments, first of all, and Pakistan's ostensibly growing profile?
Look, every country approaches situations like this from their perspective, from their interest, from their history. They are doing it, I assume, from what they think best suits their interest. I am approaching it, as I said, exactly from what suits me. If you look at it, after all, how many countries are there who have very good relations with Israel and very good relations with Iran? Not too many. Surely that is a factor that I have to take into account. How many countries are there who have 10 million community in the Gulf for whom the welfare of that community comes first and foremost? And therefore, if there is any incident, activity which puts them in harm's way, surely that would be a priority for me. How many countries are there which would have 325,000 seafarers, the bulk of whom are actually serving in ships out there? So every time there's an attack on commercial shipping, there's a good likelihood that there's an Indian national who's endangered. So my calculations are very unique to me. So I don't think these kinds of comparisons are really fair. I don't think they're really relevant.
But does the Mecca Act worry you in any way as a clear and present? It's a defense pact at the end of the day. And we've had a military conflict with our neighbor, just recently.
Well, look, you think about it. I mean, you refer to it as a defense pact. There are live military situations which each of the signatory faces. What has the Mecca Pact done in response to that?
Not everybody has come to everybody's aid necessarily. Is that where you're driving?
No, I think you just answered your question.
Do you think it's not?
No, I'm thinking nothing. I think you just
no. I'm saying
you reflected for a moment and decided to give the hall an answer. So let's leave it at that.
That's clever of you. So is it policy or sloganeering on their side?
You know, the very fact you're asking me that question
So is
is interesting, isn't it?
So you are not worried?
No, look, it's not that. In my calculus, everything counts. Everything will have a weight. You know, it's not something which is... and sometimes things need to play out as well.
The defense cooperation which can come around in terms of technology cooperation from Turkey to China and all of that, does that not concern you on a more serious note?
Everything which happens on the part of any player who's not well disposed towards me, of course counts in my calculation. Do multiple when such players, if there are more than one, when they deal with each other, do I take it into account? Of course I take it into account. But would I then proceed to bare my soul to you and everybody else? Of course I will not.
Well, let me come down, extend this further to the neighborhood. Political criticism has also come this way that somewhere we have, lost out in the neighborhood. You did mention that we built stakes, but we have had a regime change in Nepal and Bangladesh and Maldives also. So Sri Lanka also. And so in all of, some of that the relationships are working out fine. But how do you see working with these relationships when some of them actually make demands of you, like particularly Bangladesh, to extradite Sheikh Hasina or make China the first port of call? This shifting grammar in the neighborhood, coming from your earlier point that is your first building block to a strong foreign policy, how do you plan to go ahead and deal with a difficult neighborhood? Have we somewhere, the question is, lost the plot to manage things?
So first of all, I'm very glad you began by saying that this is political criticism, okay? Because I'm still relatively new to politics, but
not really.
I find politics is highly prone to amnesia. People, live for the moment. Every argument is for the moment, and they somehow hope that you don't have the ability to go back. So I want to give you share with you something. I don't know how many of you saw recently released Pew polls on what the world thinks about India. If you haven't, take a look. There's some real surprises out there. Now, if I were to ask this hall, which country do you think has the most favorable opinion of India? Would somebody like to guess in that Pew poll? Okay, look, you read the poll. Okay, somebody who hasn't read the poll, anyway, since you gave the answer. So Sri Lanka, I think, if I'm not mistaken, had a 79%, am I correct?
79.
Right? So 79% of Sri Lankans viewed India favorably. Now that really touched me because in my more youthful days, I served in Sri Lanka with the time when the Indian peacekeeping force was there, saw the most difficult moments of that relationship. And for me, the idea that 79% of Sri Lankans would have a favorable view of India would be something beyond a dream. Okay. I cite that to you really to say, when you say, you've lost the plot, maybe things have gone out of control. Let's look really what have been the challenges of our neighborhood. Now, I'm not saying everything before was bad and now things are good. I think there were problems then and there are problems now. So let's go through those problems. You had in Maldives an Indian company expelled from a major airport contract, mainly because it was an Indian company. In Bangladesh, you had a little bit more than a decade ago, large number of terrorists and separatists from India who are living openly in Dhaka and conducting operations against us. Okay? So when you say, oh, there was, in the old days the neighborhood was good. Let's not create this political fantasy out here. The neighborhood has had its problems. Every one of these countries has had something. They've had, good points, the positive aspects, they've had the difficulties. The question is, how do you find a mix? If you look even at Nepal, after the period when the king was there was difficult, in terms of the attitude towards India. And the period thereafter was equally difficult in many ways. So you had parties who actually made, in a sense, suspicion of India the centerpiece of their policies. So the record actually shows that in each of these countries, somewhere or the other, there have been issues. Why have there been issues? Because these are neighbors. These are smaller neighbors of a bigger country where it is natural that often their politics revolves around us or in some way is related to us. And so therefore, you will never have a situation where people, will not be a part of an agenda of a neighboring country, good or bad. Now, what the best way of dealing with it is actually, again, as I said, to de-risk it, to create enough cooperation so that even if there are ups and downs of politics,
economic stakes.
Yes. So it's in that sense the economics, the business, the mutual dependence. It will proof the relationship to a considerable extent. It will not solve all your problems. So I think one needs a very much more objective view of the neighborhood.
What is your objective view on Tariq's demand for Sheikh Hasina's extradition?
No, look, I'm not going to sit here and discuss what is could be or may not be conversations or not between us and a neighboring country. What I can tell you is, for any relationship to work, it has to meet the test of mutual interest. It has to work for them, it has to work for us. I'm also realistic. I'm not expecting neighbors to only do what's in my interest. There has to be a fair degree of, a reasonable degree of, my recognizing and respecting what is their interest, just as I expect them also to do so. It is when you get that landing point, that common ground, that relationships work smoothly. So I would say this, in respect of all neighbors, that relationships at the end of the day are a kind of, there's a mutuality which underpins that exercise.
Just two big power things. One, how is the relationship with China now? Given that all that we went through in Galwan and the period after that, you've been constantly engaging at various levels. As we move into the BRICS summit and we're expecting a major participation from them, how would you see the relationship now? And how is it improved or not, or where it is, and how should we see it at this point in time?
Well, I think we went through a particularly bad patch between the summer of 2020 and the autumn of 2024. And that was primarily an outcome of the situation in the border areas. So I said it then, and I continue to say it. At the end of the day, peace and tranquility in the border areas is a prerequisite for good relations. And the state of the border, to a very large measure, naturally would determine the state of the relations. Having said that, I think naturally, if assuming things are stable and the needle is more cooperative, obviously, I mean, we are both very big economies. In many ways, we are markets to each other. We are, part of a supply chain. They industrialize much faster and much bigger and much earlier, largely because many of the policies we advocate, you heard yesterday the production-linked punishment message, that we missed, from, I would say, the 1960s for a good half century, the opportunity to industrialize, the opportunity to deepen manufacturing, to develop efficiency. That's a different story, but having said that, there is obviously economic interaction between us. But in that economic, there's the reality of that interaction, but for us, the interaction is, the purpose of it is finally to modernize our economy and to develop our capabilities. But even as we do so, obviously there will be trade, there will be other economic interactions with them. I would also say at a political level, at a strategic level, it's both of us have an interest in maintaining a certain, I would say, stable relationship here.
So, in seeing those stories about business visa issues which our businessmen have been facing.
Yes, we've seen it, and I want to say, I mean, for those of you who may have an interest or who may have been affected, we have taken it up as well. So, here's my point. Look, the world is competitive. We must build up our strengths. We have to do business with the entire world. That includes China too. But it is important we deal with them confidently. We stand our ground as we have stood on the border. We develop our strengths, which unfortunately, as I said, from the 1960s for half a century, we did not do. We have to make up for the shortcomings and the mistakes of the past, and that is really what we are hoping to do. So I think a stronger, more self-reliant India, a more industrialized India, a stronger, more manufacturing India will be able to actually compete with China as it will with other major countries of the world.
You did not quite answer one of the previous questions directly. I come back to it because that was my last big power question is India-US strategic partnership and then the US-China G2. G2 has been an old concept which has been revived. How do you see things? Has it changed? Is the turf changing a little bit in the US course?
I think people use that term. I would advise you to treat it with some caution because the fact is, if you look at the US-China relationship, I think at its heart, it's a fundamentally competitive relationship. But as is often the case, it can also be collaborative in certain matters. It can be indifferent in certain sectors. So it is not that they will compete on every issue in every geography in every time frame. So it's a very complicated relationship, as is natural, So where we are concerned, I will, as I said, for me, the guiding principle is, okay, Indian national interest, what serves us at what point of time. Obviously, it's a relationship which we will monitor and assess from the manner in which it serves us best.
And the US-Pakistan equation changing, does that worry you?
Well, look, as you know, the US and Pakistan have a long history. Now, to a large extent, we have developed our own relationship with the United States. But here's the point. Pakistan is unique, not because, it's a neighbor of India. We have other neighbors. There are other countries who have problems between them. It is unique because in this day and age, there is no other country which uses terrorism so systematically and in such a sustained manner to attack and pressurize another neighbor. And that has an impact on public opinion in this country. So we are a democratic society. I'm a minister of a democratic polity. I cannot be impervious to what is the public opinion of my country. If public opinion of my country feels that terrorism is an issue on which, another country does not empathize with us, does not understand our point of view, or worse, then obviously it will have an impact. And obviously, if there is a public opinion, I have to take it into account where my policy making is concerned.
I get that, sir. That's a very clear answer. Thank you, but you did paint a very grim picture, but also gave us solutions and possible roadmap to go ahead. So thank you. It's always been a very engaging conversation with you, Dr. Jaishankar, and thank you for giving us the time once again.
India's room for maneuver is something its diplomacy has to create relationship by relationship. Honorable Minister, a big thank you to you for taking time out and being here with us. And thank you so much, Pranab Dhal, for taking the best out of this interaction. Ladies and gentlemen, let's see off the Minister with a big, big round of applause, please.
Coming up next, we're going to move into one of deep technology's most ambitious frontiers, with Alexander Panov joining us for an address on neurotechnology and why its next century may begin in India. But before that, good news for you. We have a short break. We'll see you back in the hall at 4 p.m. Grab a cup of tea or coffee.
Thank you.